The following production is intended for entertainment purposes only. We are not legal professionals. We do not speak for any government agency, and the opinions expressed here are our own. Relax.
Recording's in progress, so watch what you say.
It sure is.
What's up, man?
Oh, nothing. I'm having a great night. If you hear screaming children behind me, it's not because I'm performing an exorcism. It might sound like there's an exorcism going on behind those doors. It's really just a house full of great, great, great kids.
Uh, I know we're gonna get to it, and so I don't want to jump. I'm not gonna jump the gun, but now that you're like a tarot guy,
Oh, yeah?
could you do it? Could you do an exorcism, or or is your deal more like you'd be more of like a cooperating with the demon? Is that as a tarot guy, or like
Uh, I'm slightly offended at that, saying that I cooperated with the demons. But
I thought that's what she had to do to use tarot deck.
no.
You'll educate us.
I don't
How's
think,
that?
yeah. Well, I think there's good and bad. If we want to go back into the good and the bad framework, there's good and bad of everything. I really, there's somewhere on the scale of everything because there, not,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyway,
We'll get into it. Anyway, yeah. We haven't
but
even welcomed everybody.
oh, welcome everyone to Lala's podcast with Justin and Clayton. I'm Clayton. It's my buddy Justin. We just talk about things, but you know what? We're smart. We're smart
Yes, we
fellers.
do. And we record it when we talk about things.
Yeah.
Um, does it ever just kind of occur to you that like by recording this and putting it out, that this out like it's out there forever. So no matter what you say, or like if you wanted to run for Congress or something down the road or whatever, like it's there forever. And
Yeah.
like if you say something wrong, like it's there, and at some point somebody's going to come along and be like, that dude's an idiot, because they
Uh,
don't know that you retracted it, right? They just saw the episode where you said something wrong. uh and I mean, who really cares? But I don't know, sometimes it strikes me that
well,
that we're recording.
yeah. Few things on that. I was disqualified from any public office a long, long time before we ever pressed record on this. Um, but kind of like the confirmation hearings that we're seeing now.
Yeah,
Um,
remind me to talk about that, by the way.
I sure will. The confirmations hearings that we're seeing now, there's they're bringing up a lot of stuff. Like there's no one perfect under the sun, obviously.
Yeah.
And especially if you're seeking public office, there's probably some stuff. You got some
why is
skeletons.
why is there such a why does that go so well together? Skeletons in
Scumbag.
your closet and public office.
Well, who doesn't have skeletons in their closet?
Yeah, but I mean, like, it just seems like they're most people's are pretty tame compared to politicians.
Well, the problem with politicians is they present themselves as perfect, which I get that too. You don't want to come out and be like, "Hey, vote for me. I, I'm kind of a scumbag, or at least I used to be."
Yeah, I don't pay child support.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's the issue is how they present themselves. They present themselves as perfect, but I don't know anyone, and I know some folks. I don't know anyone that doesn't have something, especially something that can be spun into a huge deal. Like,
Oh, for sure.
did you hear? Did you hear he cheated on his wife and he had this thing? Well, what they don't say is that the marriage was over for a year and they just had been going through divorce. I don't know, but
Or
stuff like
living in
that.
separate houses or whatever.
Yeah. Um, but you can always spin something. Justin Crafton is a notorious reckless driver. Everyone knows he drives like shit. Oh, you mean someone saw him one time at a stoplight texting on his phone and you got a picture of
Yeah,
it?
that's kind of what's happening right now with like sometimes occasionally I park crooked, and so like I've got this reputation for parking crooked all the time, and like I did it one time, right, or
Hmm.
occasionally. Uh, so yeah, same kind of deal.
Well, I think you've admitted on here before that you are a bad parker. Like you've consciously
I
changed.
don't no, I don't know that I've admitted that. Well, I
You've
suppose
you
I
said
have this
that.
recorded.
Yeah, I actually I do think I have a recording of it. You said that you now like to. It might have been on the Frasier episodes, the ones that just
Oh,
dropped.
where you take up more space.
Yeah, you mean you
Yeah,
park
okay.
like a butthole?
I park how I park, and
Yeah,
sometimes I look back and think, "Ooh, uh, did did I tell you I
Exhibit
tell you
A.
the other day about when I walked into Quick Trip and I was like halfway to the door and I looked back and I'm like, oh man, that's bad. But I was so close. I was so close to already being inside of that. I was like, yeah, it's all right. I walk in and immediately I see some guy that like we're good friends, but I hadn't quite seen him in a while. So I pat him on the back a couple times, real hard. Pat, pat, man, what's up? And he looks at me kind of quizzically, and I'm like, "You are not who I thought you were." And I walked away and got my drink, and then got back in my truck. And I just thought to myself, if somebody knew nothing else about me
Mhm.
except they were getting their coffee at the same time, and they see that interaction, and then they see me getting into the truck. I'm the
The,
person that parked like that.
the
I
poorly
just wonder
parked
what they
truck.
would think about me. Like,
Oh,
would they think that guy's a badass and he does what he wants?
no.
Like
What
he does it rock and roll for
they'd come to work and say, "Guys, I saw someone who was obviously drunk this morning at Quick Trip. He parked like an asshole, and then he
it
just
was two
walked.
o'clock in the afternoon.
And then he just walked. Oh, okay. He was noon drinking, and then he just walked up to a random stranger, assaulted him, and said,
Right.
"You're not who you're supposed to be," and then walked away and got a coffee. Like, be careful on the road is out there, fellas. You never know.
Yeah. And this guy wants to run for Congress.
Yeah,
This is the
exactly.
guy you want representing you.
Hmm.
Kind of like I've done this a couple man, sometimes I just do dumb stuff. Um I did something similar where I thought I knew a guy and he was limping. Like he was walking toward me, he was limping. And I was like, what happened to you? And he looks at me again quizzically, and I realize I don't know this guy. And then I realize he's physically handicapped, like
Uh-huh.
he's disabled.
Uh-huh.
And I felt so bad, and I was like, "I'm sorry, you're not who I thought you were."
That's how you recover, is to say I'm sorry. That that is
Yeah,
the appropriate way to recover.
I mean, imagine though, maybe I helped him, maybe I changed his path that day
Oh, you
because
think you
yeah,
healed? He walk
perhaps
he, he walks out and just throws his wheelchair to the side. I'm healed. Some asshole asked me what I was doing. It was kind of like when Jesus said, "Hey, pick up your mat and walk." Like, what are you doing?
that's what I'm saying. Like perhaps for the first time in his life, he thought, "What did happen to me?" And he figured it out. So
You know
again,
what?
again, I just think that sometimes I'm too hard on myself. Maybe I'm doing okay.
That's what it is. Actually, out of everything you just described, you're too hard on. You need to give yourself some. Okay. See where we're going.
Yeah.
The guest Wi-Fi stream is working really well. I think
But
you might have found a hack.
well, I need to get a about a 50-foot cable which I don't have any. I've got like a probably a 30-foot cable. I'm not sure what 50 feet would cost. Or is that expensive? Or do you know?
What you should do is get your internet guy over there or a handyman. I bet you know a couple. And you need to, if you can't hook up your modem in your office, you need to hook up your modem in your office. You need to run some wire from either the coax cable. Yeah, it needs to be. You need a coax cable run down into your office, which should be fairly easy to do. Uh, you could YouTube that.
Yeah.
Yeah, run some coax cable down to your office, and you need to hook up your modem in your office.
Actually, yeah, I'll because behind me is unfinished. So I'll bet I could come up through there. I'd have to think of where that would put me. But then I'd have to go yeah, yeah. I could probably do it. But in any case, I need to get hardwired in. I think that's the solution.
How many projects in your life have you started and very quickly realized that you bit off more than you could chew and either powered through it or gave or like how many times in your life have you started a project in your house? You're like, this should be fairly simple, and realized it was more than what you could handle.
Approximately all of them.
All of them.
Not approximately. Yeah, there's a couple that actually worked out. But if I say this should be easy, guaranteed it's a 2-day job minimum. And that's it's 2 days until I stop.
It's
Like I give up and we just live with it.
oh, is that your answer? You're like, oh, this
That
is what we
that I
just
mean
gotta.
that's it. And then from then we just live different. Like it's just we adapt. My wife's clothes go in my daughter's closet because she doesn't like the musty smell from the plumbing I can't fix. Uh, and I'm like, it's musty. It smells manly. I don't mind it.
That's mold.
We adapt.
Um, when I was,
That's why we're alive and dinosaurs aren't.
yeah, for sure, that and the opposable thumbs. I saw a thing recently. I don't know if it's true or not, but they say that there was a human, not Homo sapien, but like a Homo human back however many years ago. The only way to physically judge a species intelligence is the size of its frontal cortex. And if there is no frontal cortex to measure, it's the size of the skull. And out of all the humans that have existed that they've known of, Homo sapiens sapiens, us, have the biggest skull to body ratio. So that we think that's why we're the smartest. Except recently they discovered one, but they discovered another species that had a body ratio 30%. So they think it had the capacity to be much. They say it would be like the difference between us and a dog is how that would have been to us. Because they
Really?
say it, yeah, a normal dog has like can recognize enough vocabulary as about a 2 or 3 year old, like drink and water and walk and things like that. Um, they say if the frontal cortex filled was proportionate to ours, then the ratio of skull to body would mean this thing was, yeah, smarter to us like how we are to dogs.
Physically, what would it have been?
A human species, but I'm saying this, and I'm I'm second guessing it as I say it because I think I might have gotten it from an Instagram video, and that's just a step above a TikTok video, which has no credibility at all.
That's honestly an Instagram video is a video that was taken from TikTok and just played on Instagram.
Yeah,
That's
but
basically where they come from.
it made the cut. Like it made it past enough filters to where Meta was able to accept it. How bummed are
Well,
you that
oh
TikTok's on
my
its way?
goodness.
Yeah.
My goodness gracious. I forgot. I've got an email that I need to review, and it's going to be a surprise to you and everybody at the same time. I hope that I'm not airing our dirty laundry to everybody.
That's fine.
All right. This is from YouTube, and it says, "Hi, Lawless Podcast. We have reviewed your appeal for the following
Oh,
video, episode 23, Red Wave Reality and Heavy Lifting. We reviewed your content carefully and have confirmed that it violates our medical misinformation policy.
hmm
We know this is probably disappointing news, but it's our job to make sure that YouTube is a safe place for all. How does this impact your content? Well, we won't be putting, I said, well, they didn't. We won't be putting your content, what? We won't be putting your content back up on YouTube."
it's
Oh, they're
just
just
that
talking about
video.
that video. Okay, that's stupid. If your appeal was for a warning, you will not be given another warning in the future. If your appeal was for a strike, the strike will remain on your channel. You can find more information about warnings and strikes at the YouTube Help Center. Well, I wonder if I click learn more, if it's gonna just take me to the complainers page.
Well, it's weird, and I looked this up. I saw that email that you're talking about. I looked
Oh,
this.
that was unread.
Oh, was it? Must have been another one. They had one like that before,
Yeah.
or we got that same email before, but it was for that same episode. Um, and it was just because we said that word.
What was it? I don't even remember. And yeah, obviously, say it.
I said Maxine,
Okay.
and it's
Yeah.
just because we
And
said that word. Like
really,
I said it real quick in passing. Like, we can't there's all this other stuff that has been questioned in the past, like elections and immigration and vaccines, and they were like, boom. It was just because I said that word.
I I wonder if even saying it with an M, if that's,
Well,
I
here
assume that that's safe, and I assume that it's just AI that's scanning for it, and it's AI that considered our review. I'm surely there's no human that's doing any of this, correct?
no, 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 no. I
Yeah.
mean, because they do all this content moderation at scale. Think of all the millions and probably billions of people that are using YouTube every single day. And I
Yeah.
know only a small portion of them are actually uploading content, but even still, it's millions of people, like from the billions of consumers to the millions of content creators in some way or form. There's no way you can assign a human to that. It has to
Yeah.
be they're using AI to listen for words, and it's just because I said that word. Um, I do have a workaround in my mind, and it's just uploading it straight to other platforms. Like that episode is still on Spotify. I could upload that episode to straight to a meta platform like Facebook or Instagram, but it was like an hour and a half episode. I don't know how big or how long of videos, like the size of videos that they allow on those spaces, but I could find out. But
Well, who? So Facebook owns Instagram,
Meta,
YouTube.
YouTube is owned
Yeah.
by Google.
So, like, I mean, if you get banned on one, aren't you going to get banned on all?
No,
Not banned. I shouldn't say that, but like taken down.
no, not anymore because it's a different system. Meta is Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and I guess some others. Um, YouTube is owned by Google and Amazon. That's the
Mm.
same company. Bezos. Jeffrey. Jeffrey Bezos.
Um,
But there's giant podcasts that talk about that stuff all the time. But I think what it is they have like they must be put into a specific category because
sure.
if
Yeah.
Joe Rogan does talk
Hmm.
about that on
Yeah,
almost
for
every
sure.
episode and they don't take his down. Um, Part of the Problem podcast, Sean Ryan podcast.
I mean, even a political podcast is going to use that word.
Well, and I looked into it. I know I didn't break any laws. Obviously, I didn't break any laws. But even on YouTube, and this might be different because I was looking up copyright infringement stuff. If you're if you're presenting information as even as entertainment or as research, but you say like by their rules, if you say like those reaction videos on YouTube where someone will listen to Tyler Childers or Zach Bryan sing a song, and someone who doesn't normally listen to that, and they'll pause and be like, "Gosh, damn, listen to this boy sing." They're playing other people's content, and they're not getting flagged because the rules of YouTube stated rules of the copyright infringement stuff is if you're presenting it either in an informational or even in a entertainment way, then it's not infringement. It's only infringement if you're saying that it's your content. Like if I were to play Led Zeppelin and be like, "Hey, listen to the song I created," and then press play, that would be copyright.
Well, or would it be by posting? Are you saying, look at this content that I own?
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
Um, so I would think that would apply to any other realm of information, but the reality is it, it's obviously controlled, and it's controlled for political reasons. It's controlled for social engineering reasons. I mean, um, I was going to talk about this on one of our other episodes. I did some research. Actually, I still have the notes, but Meta, like some of their top officers, like executive officers or whatever, were uh, from the FBI and from the CIA and from Department of Information. Like they were high-ranking officials, like the kind of officials that you would know because like type of people they list on their website as department heads or as people who like go and testify to Congress. They retire from there and then immediately are implanted into Meta, or they were implanted into Meta. And that that is how the government was censoring people. The government was violating people's First Amendment right. Because you say, "Oh, Facebook's a privately owned company. They don't have to abide by the First Amendment." Well, sure, if that was true. The problem is it's ran by government officials. So it's not a privately owned company. I mean, it is a privately owned company, but it's ran by the government. And the
Yeah,
government was
it's
telling
controlled
them
by
to
the
send,
government.
yeah, controlled and yeah. So you can't say they have the right to uh moderate their content or to censor their content based on, however they want if it's being ran by government officials. Well, like, so no, it's not. It's obviously government controlled. Like these
Yeah.
intelligence officials are running the program. That's why, yeah. I might have just got us kicked off of Meta too. Sorry.
Could you say, is it true to say that it's impossible, or let me ask a different way. Is it possible to live in society today and not be affected by social engineering? Like,
No.
could you unplug enough, or like, I mean, yeah, obviously if you lived like in the mountains, but I mean, could you live in normal society and not be affected by social engineering?
No, definitely not. So I mean, the only answer to that is to educate yourself, right? Try to be more conscious of what you're consuming. It's
Yeah.
just like diet. It's just like everything else. Like I could
Yeah.
just eat Lucky Charms and McDonald's and Coca-Cola, or like, yeah, educate yourself and start to choose what you intake. And you might be wrong. That's the risk of consuming only independent media or consuming only. Dang it. I was listening to Steve Ranella on Joe Rogan today, and he was talking about some Great Lakes fishermen that um their diet was 100% the fish that they caught out of the Great Lakes, and they ended up getting mercury poisoning and arsenic poisoning. And you'd think, man, they're eating the cleanest, most natural way, like they're in touch with Earth. Well, even then, you might be wrong. You might be wrong. It's just like consuming independent media. Like, no, it's not New York Times, and no, it's not all these other captured traditional media outlets. But you're rolling the dice with that too, because we're not Joe Rogan, but even part of the problem, or Tucker Carlson, they don't have all these safety nets of people fact checking every single thing like they had at Fox News or at New York Times. But
Yeah.
also, you don't have the people controlling what comes out. That's why, I mean, that's the risk you take.
Mm.
I say that that juice is worth the squeeze,
Yeah.
but that's just me.
Oh well, I mean, you just gotta kind of be reasonable and judge each scenario and each source independently, um, consistently. I mean, if even if it's your guy and he says something that's kind of wacky, or that you don't agree with, then I guess as long as you just got to be willing to change course, which I mean that's like the ultimate sign of growth, right? To change your mind.
Yeah, absolutely. That might be the only sign of real objective thought, is the ability to change your mind. Because if you don't have the ability to change, you don't have the ability to grow. Greg Anderson was the head of their misinformation division at Meta, and he was also the former head of psychological operations at the NSA before he took that position at Meta.
And just for reference, what does the NSA do?
They're an intelligence branch that traditionally has been in charge of collecting signals intelligence, so like radio waves or um, internet, or anything that's not human intelligence would be signals intelligence. And that's the NSA's traditional job, is like spying and intelligence gathering, but not in the human intelligence form, which would be the CIA's job. Like the CIA's job is not to arm and train militias and terrorist groups all over the country, all over the world. Their job is to collect human intelligence and to bring that to the government. That
So if his job is what was his position again?
head of psychological operations at the
So
NSA.
so what
And
is psych? Go ahead. What are psych? What are psychological operations in non-human intelligence?
propaganda. He was in charge of American propaganda, or in charge of um
So not in the collection
no,
of.
in the distribution, in global, and in social engineering, and in
So but you said the chief the chief the main job of the NSA is to collect information, right?
yeah,
So where does the dissemination of like where does that fit in
that's a good question.
their existence?
That's a really good question. Um, I don't know. I mean, it's so, I don't know. I don't even really know where to start. That's why I keep saying I don't know, as I don't even know where to start with that, because I mean, it's just they're just bad actors. And we justify it by saying like, well, the other team's doing it too, and since they're doing it, we got to do it. Well, someone
Yeah,
needs to stop.
yeah, dude, that's exactly what you're seeing at I think what you're seeing at the confirmation hearings.
Yeah,
And it's such a joke, such an absolute joke, how when it's the one side, it's us saying that. When it's the other side, it's them saying that. And it's just so stupid. Like none of, and honestly, it's a lot court, like a court proceeding where it's not about truth. It
No,
is not about truth. It
no.
is not about justice. It is about whatever other game is at play. Uh,
Even in a
it's
courtroom, it's about the
such a
performance.
waste. Yeah, yeah. But so specifically talking about the confirmation hearings, like it's like the one guy was the one guy was and I don't know anything about Pete Hedge
Exit.
Seth. I'm not sure his name. Know nothing about him except that he used to be a host on Fox News and that he was in the military. That's it. Um, and so, and I also learned from the confirmation hearings from a clip that he apparently had an affair with his on his second wife, something I don't know.
Sure.
Anyway,
Which
so
has nothing to do with his job performance.
he's getting he's getting blasted by this congressman for being basically a dirtbag, right? And this is a now and obviously I've become more left than I've ever been, still considered right. So no offense to my left friends, but a Democratic congressman, in my mind, has always been pretty loose, right? Has always been a little sketch, little free. I think of a Kennedy. I think of a many wives, whatever. Who knows? But for him to be like just getting trashed by this congressman, it just seems almost funny. Like
Well,
who are you to talk?
yeah, exactly. I mean, m- the glaring example is RFK as, the head of the Department of Health. I wish they haven't even got to him yet, but they're talking about his kooky conspiracy theories, which by the way, if you ever if you ever read the real Anthony Fauci or listen to the Audible, um, the things that he says in there is wild. Like he exposes a lot of Anthony Fauci and a lot of the whole vaccine
Where
system.
where does he get his information?
He was he first like I was gonna say first source, but it original source, like from the documents. He was a lawyer before he was an environmental lawyer. That was his whole career. And he started off by suing these like paper companies and these industrial companies for polluting the river or for polluting the environment. Man, I can't even dig into this like I want to because I have to say that word to really. But he got kickstarted.
Can you just say like the V word?
Yeah, he transitioned into that area because some mothers came to him, like after he established this pretty good track record of suing the government and suing these high level untouchable companies and winning. Some mothers came to him and said that their children were injured, and he ended up doing research into that and found out that nothing was safety tested. None of them were safety. If you read the book, this is not me saying this. If you read the book, he proves, I was going to say alleges, but no, he proves with pretty good information that out of the multitude of those things that are forced on to children, and they say they're not forced, well, sure, but also if they don't have these things, they're not allowed into public schools. And if you don't go to public schools, you're going to be arrested. The parents could be arrested for truancy. So, yeah, they have to have these things. And none of them are safety tested, and they all cause injuries. And back during the Reagan Republican, the Republican hero, back during his administration, these companies came to him and said, "Hey, we can't, we have to stop because we're going to lose our business by all of these injury and wrongful death suits." And that's why all of Congress, a Republican Congress, but also a very strong blue Congress, um, gave them immunity where they can't be sued or they can't lose in these suits. Like they can't be found liable. That's why they get away with it. And he lays all this out in the book, The Real Anthony Fauci. And here's the thing: if that wasn't true, he would be in jail or he would have been sued by now, and he hasn't been. He hasn't been
So
sued by Fauci because it's true.
what what's what's his deal? Like, well, like that if you take 1,000 steps back, is he just an evil guy? Is he a mad scientist? Is he trying to get rich? Is he what's his ultimate? Why did he push this? Did he think that this was going to kill everybody? Like why did he do the
It's
things
money.
he did? Ultimately, you think it was money?
Yeah, he did the same thing in the 80s with AIDS medications that turned out to kill far more people than it ever helped. And there's proof that it didn't, it never even had the potential to help anyone. There was a lot of these leftover, same thing that happened after World War II with nitrogen and fluoride in drinking water. And these industrial seed oils that we use to cook our food in that were never meant for human consumption. We just had a bunch of them, and they're like, hey, we got all this seed oil or we got all this nitrogen left over that we used to use in mustard gas. What are we going to do with it? Spray it on your plants. It also is a really good weed killer. And you can engineer if you can genetically modify these plants to not be susceptible to it, well, then we got a win-win because the farmers have to buy our nitrogen fertilizer that kills everything else, and they have to buy our seeds that happen to be immune to this nitrogen fertilizer and all these pesticides, DMT or whatever, not DMT, DDT. DMT would be nice if they sprayed that. But yeah, it all comes back to money. It was the same thing with the AIDS medication in the 80s. And man, the Operation Warp Speed was a Trump deal. In 2019, 2020, Operation Warp Speed was a Trump deal where that those things were not
Okay.
tested at all.
Okay. So pause that for a second, and I do want to talk about that with Fauci. Do you think that does a guy like him think that he's doing the right thing and it just happens to pay very well? Or is it straight up like, I can't believe I'm getting away with this? Like, should be, I'm a criminal. Like, is it, you know what I'm saying? Is he a criminal? Was there a criminal intent?
Well, think of the worst guys, and we're not going to talk about the one that we always default to, but think about like the drug cartels or whoever, Che Rivera or Castro. They started off with very pure intentions, and there was just a chip here, a chip there, and it became this is just how we do business, and this is how it goes. And I'm getting really rich, and so 40 years later, this Kennedy, who is by the way an addict, self-admittedly recovering heroin addict, has been clean for decades, but is a recovering heroin addict. Was like had multiple affairs, was kind of a classic Kennedy. I think he found redemption. I think his view is that he found redemption in being an advocate at first for the environment and then for these very legitimate health concerns that is now obviously very, very corrupted. And he's just the voice of it. And I think he's taken that on as his life's purpose. Well, that's what he says, is he's taken this on as his life's purpose to point out what he sees as the evils. And I think Fauci started off I don't think he started off as trying to be this big bad corrupt guy. I think he started off probably trying to do good, and then he realized he was making some money. And I think even now he still probably thinks that he did the right thing.
Well, no, that's what I mean. So, but if he was doing it just for the money, he wouldn't think, so he thought that he was doing the right thing back then.
Back then, well, I don't know. I think it probably happened before that because he became the head. And here's another thing: you don't get to become the head of a bureaucratically appointed head of these agencies without getting your palm greased and without greasing
Yeah.
some other palms. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've got a body count by the time you're that far.
Because they need to trust
Which
you.
Yeah, which is really, it's really sad. Which, I mean, so far it's been kind of a depressing. It's been kind of a depressing conversation.
It's almost like the only cure for it is to implode the entire thing and start over. Like it
Is that
seems
humanity?
no, these departments, like
Oh,
like all of our intelligence departments, all of our I don't even want to spread anything that could be, but all of the departments of government that are notoriously corrupt. Um,
what would you? I mean, what department is it? Like wildlife? I don't know that they're notoriously corrupt, but
you know
like,
what? That's the only department that libertarians like is the park services. Like, hey, you guys
yeah,
are cool.
that's why I think I'm libertarian. I don't
I
know.
think you are
I need
too.
to take the test.
I think most people actually are. They just
Yeah,
they fall into these teams. I think they obviously wouldn't consider they wouldn't say that they're libertarian, but I think libertarian is what we say America is, or what we say America should be, like what
yeah,
everyone says America should
yeah.
be, left, right, center, is actually libertarian. Like, oh, you think people should be honest and there shouldn't be money in politics? You're a libertarian. You think people should be able to do whatever they want as long as they're not hurting anyone? That's libertarian.
Yeah. I'll tell you, if it wasn't like if it was a like a blind test or like a you couldn't know the party, uh, it'd be interesting to see who people voted for, you know, because I guarantee there have been times where I would have voted for the independent or libertarian, you know, person, but I know they're not gonna compete, so I'm not gonna waste my vote, and I would at least rather this guy than that guy. So, you know, and I know even I think you may have even said it before that that's the wrong thing to do, but that's also like, what else are you gonna do?
I get it. I get it. Um, Here's a little bit of American history for you that I think most people don't know. I like to throw this out there, this, and you've heard this a lot, or a version of this, that like right wing, left wing, they're all part of the same bird.
Yeah,
What's funny about that is they came from a party that was called the Democratic Republican Party. And the Democratic Republican Party was one party, and the Whigs were the other party. Well, in the 19th century, in the mid 1800s, the Whigs were just like there were no more Whigs. And at that time, uh, Jackson and like the mid and early 1800s players where that happened, there was just enough difference to where that party split off slightly, like slightly split off. But they what they did is they focused on the slight differences and made it this huge deal. When
who's
really
they?
the political leaders of the I think it was 1838, but don't quote me on that. But I want to say it was 1838 where the Whigs got boosted and the Democratic Republican Party split into two and focused on this little bitty difference between them because they're all for big government. They're all for control.
Yeah,
They,
yeah. When you're in it, yeah,
they are the same people.
yeah,
Like, yeah, it's not the constitutionalists versus the Whigs anymore. It's the Democratic Republicans. They're the same people, and they're just tricking you into thinking that they're different, so they can trick you in onto their team. They're the same.
yeah.
Obama's a
So,
Bush, and Clinton was a Bush, and they're all related. They're all Romneys and Cheneys. They're the same.
yeah, yeah. So I was gonna say, what would it look like to not have parties, but to just have there's going to be four spots, right? Like so there's one party and there's however many candidates. I'm not sure. Like so there's four candidates, whatever, running for this position, and there's a certain number of these positions available. Vote. But
Why?
you're saying at the end of the day, though, it doesn't matter because they're the same person. They're
Yeah.
the same thing.
You say what would happen? We've seen what would happen where the American government, the United States government today would be unrecognizable to the founding fathers because it's just been one party controlling everything and getting their will pretty much done. Like their big goals, like no one objected to the war in Afghanistan. No one objected to the Patriot Act, which is still on the books and still gets passed by overwhelming majority, still, because they all want it. They all want censorship. They all want to collect your data. They all want to control you and the world. And they weren't back then, but it was just a different name. They're all owned by BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard and CPAC. You know what I mean? They're all
I just
owned by them.
I just thought of the meme with the kid from The Simpsons, Chief Wiggum's son, sitting in the school in the bus, and he says, "Chuckles, I'm in danger."
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
there's again because we started. I think we started the conversation with there's no escape from social engineering, and
yeah.
now like they gotcha.
Yeah. What does it look like? It looks like an entire state that's on fire, or the largest city in the most populated city in the most populated state is on fire, and they can't do anything about it because of politics, because of the way they want to look, and it's catching up to them. Or we've had 20 years of intelligence agencies that were never supposed to, were actually constitutionally forbidden from acting in the United States. They have been acting in the United States with impunity, like without any repercussions. The only repercussions that could ever be, or that has ever been, are some journalists speak about it and they're quickly hushed or they're quickly fired. And even then, you think, well, they're still bit by the snake. Like they still have that venom in their blood. Thinking of, I'm thinking of Tucker Carlson or some of these people, even Bobby Kennedy, that is I think we could get flagged for this too, so I'm going to use some different names that are big supporters of Bizreal and will and will fight for the bitter end of a country that is not us, that
Yeah,
has nothing to do with us, but they're the largest political donor outside of BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, and even they are ran by BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street. Um, Yeah, it's weird. That's what you see. Like when one party runs a country into the ground, that's it. That's where we are. And they distract us with all these little bitty differences. Like they're all getting their big objectives through without problems. Like I said, all this money, they all support Bisrael. They all support these forever wars. But they want to focus on gay marriage because that's such a hot button issue. And even now, we're past that. But 20 years ago, it was gay marriage. Or what is it now? These things that I can't talk about. Or I don't know. You also see where the hope comes in to a degree are these wild card players, the independent media version of these actors that might not have everything right. But you know what? They might not, and they might even be wrong on some stuff. But I personally, and I'm not going to put this on anyone else, I personally am willing to take the chance on some little things. Like I said, Trump was bad on Operation Warp Speed. This was the largest transfer of wealth. And I'm willing to roll the dice on him because it looks like he's not pushing for the same thing that the Republican Democratic Party has been pushing for since the 1830s or eight. Yeah, I think it's 1838. is when they split. That date won't get out of my head.
So in in regards to, I wanted to put a pin in Trump's response to uh, Maxine. And do you think that he was in a position where,
1824. Sorry.
from a political perspective, he like he just had to go along, like he had to go along with it, like politically? Did he really believe his advisors that this was super dangerous? Did, like, what do you think his motives were to allow Operation Warp Speed?
A couple things. I think he's he's controlled by his ego. If someone convinces him, like even with some theater, like if he knows that it would seem like to piss the Democrats off, and remember Nancy Pelosi and all these people were saying at the very beginning, they're like, don't wear masks. Masks are stupid. Don't take this thing that he's pushing out. It hasn't been tested. But as soon as the election came and the other guy started saying it, they all jumped on board. I think they tricked him because it came from the Department of Defense. That thing that we're not allowed to talk about was developed by the Department of Defense. That's spelled out in the real Anthony Fauci also. And like miraculously, we had this thing to combat this other thing that just showed up out of nowhere. And we're like, oh wow, that's really quick to have this thing. Come to find out, it wasn't tested at all. I should probably stop on that. But there was a lot of questionable things around that, and they convinced him to say that it was his idea and it was going to make the other side look bad. And so that's why he was so quick to push it out. And it made a lot of
Yeah.
his billionaire friends a lot of money. And you know what? I think he did this to better his odds whenever the 2016 race was happening. But like why he aligned himself with Mike Pence and why he aligned himself with a lot of these traditional, I call them Cheney Bush Republicans, is because he thought that was his way in. And it probably was. Like maybe he wouldn't have been elected back then if he didn't have these other deep state people in his party. But they controlled. They were the ones pulling the strings, and they were just smart enough to play on his ego to make him think it was his idea. And maybe it was his idea. Like maybe he is really bad on that. It just seems like it seems to me like they played him.
Imagine, and I feel like I've known people similar to him, not in a relationship that really affected my life, but I'm thinking, if I can imagine having a boss like that
Hmm.
and understanding, like figuring out what the key is to get him to do whatever you want. Like, that's kind of a superpower. And I do think, especially, I think he's very susceptible to his ego.
Yeah,
And so
like
if you
maybe
can
everyone
challenge,
is.
sure, not probably, yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's a really good point, but probably not to the same degree.
Sure. Well, because yeah, everyone has a different combination of these things, but also he's built his 80 years off of being convincing everyone that he's the smartest person in the room and he knows how to take control. Being an
Mhm.
I keep saying this word, but it fits of being an egomaniac, of thinking he's the
Yeah,
biggest, baddest alpha. He has a
yeah.
track record of success and he's still succeeding with that tool.
That's something that always kind of surprised me in law enforcement, with obviously a male dominated field and an alpha male dominated field. How
Okay.
many guys, I thought, were, do you disagree with that?
They think they're alphas.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. How many guys put on this portrayal of being super masculine, top dog, alpha, and people believe it?
Yeah.
And or or not only that, but like same with people that report themselves to be professionals, not professionals, experts, and
Mhm.
you're like, this guy came out of the academy last month or last year. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And that's not to say that somebody
People
couldn't
probably
come
said
and
that about me.
yeah, maybe, probably, maybe,
Yeah.
definitely, I don't know. Um, I don't know.
Well, and you know that goes back to a libertarian idea, and we actually might have talked about. I know we talked about this on one of our episodes. I just don't know if it aired. That one of the libertarian core foundational beliefs or whatever is that all laws, all of them, taxes, from taxes down to the speed limit, or from like the Patriot Act down to a stop sign, um, is actually a threat of violence. And like a libertarian idea is non-aggression and non-violence, like excluding self-defense, but all laws are actually a threat of violence. And that's why these guys, these cops come out thinking that they're alphas because they have a badge and a gun. And just wearing a badge and a gun it's very much communicated, and most of the time it's nonverbal, but even sometimes it's verbal, is a verbal threat of violence. If you fuck with me, and even if you get one over on me, there's going to be an entire nation going after you, up to and including the president. Like if you fuck with me, there's going to be another my partner's on the way. And then the agency's on the way. And then another agency's on the way. And then the state's going to get you. Like there's no beating. You can't beat the law. At least not at the time it's going on.
Hmm.
Because
Right.
it's a threat of death if you do.